Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Craft of the Draft podcast. We're at episode 20, so we're getting through them quite a lot now. Another week of Talent League footy done and dusted, and it's the first podcast back in a while where we're just talking about Talent League for this week. We've got some rep footy coming up this weekend, but Jonty, how was your weekend of footy in general?
Yeah, no, it was a good weekend. Looking forward to reviewing some of the players that did well, some of the players that are Vic Country, Vic Metro and Allies representatives who have gone back to Talent League and carried over that form, and then some others who are really putting their names forward as well. So we'll get through quite a few names with a bit of Talent League, a bit of representative footy from a boys and girls perspective on the horizon in the next couple of weeks.
For sure. And this week, we'll start with the reviews. So just the quick reviews of boys and girls. We'll go through the boys' games. First, on the Saturday morning, the Rebels beat the Stinrays 8-16-64 to Rebels beat them, the Stinrays, to 5-1-31. Jonty, you've watched this game. Tell me a bit about it. The Rebels, 8-16 to 5-1. They dominated on the scoreboard at the very least, but probably weren't as clinical.
Yeah, it was pretty even up until half time, and then they were able to extend the lead to, I guess, an insurmountable one through the third quarter, and were able to continue on with it. And will probably be a little bit disappointed with that, but a good performance from the Rebels and a few good players to come out of that we'll touch on. But I guess from a Dandenong perspective, we probably don't touch on any of their players later on. So just to give a brief overview, I think that Billy Wilson played a pretty strong game. And Kate Delarue was okay off half forward as well. They were probably the main two. Cooper Simpson rested. Obviously, he's got a repeat corky from the Vic Country game, so he wasn't in action. But there was no one that absolutely put their name in lights from a Dandenong perspective.
And then the second game, Sandringham beat Gippsland 15-9-99 to 9-10-64. And this game was neck and neck the whole time. I think it was Gippsland were up by 3 points at three-quarter time, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and then up until three-quarter time, and then Sandringham ran away with it in the last quarter. I think it's a bit of talk. There's probably the best win that they've had all season, with obviously a severely weakened squad. Gippsland probably went in as favourites, and Sandringham, having the young squad and having the inexperience, being able to run it out, and seeing players like Jet Hayada and these sort of players who are bottom ages stand up would have been really pleasing. Kalsha Deer kicked 3 goals too, so he's obviously a Hawthorn father-son prospect, and there's some others we'll touch on later.
For sure. And then I was at this one on Saturday, Eastern and Calder. Calder won that one 17-10, 112 to 11-9-75. And it was a terrific game in that first half, goal for goal, really. There was a pretty strong breeze, but it was weirdly that the team kicking against the breeze was actually kicking most of the goals. And then Calder just exploded in that third quarter. I think they kicked 7 or 8 goals, and it was extremely impressive to watch. A team that everyone plays their role extremely well, and it definitely showed in that game. And then the rain came down. It was pretty much game over after that point. So a really impressive win for Calder in that one, and I'll touch on a couple of the players who stood out later on. The last game on the Saturday was Murray, who lost to the Western Jets 10-10-70 to 13-8-86. Murray seemed to have an issue of not being able to hold on to their leads. They were up by 30 points in the second quarter, but Western stormed back in the second half. I'm not sure if you know more on that, Jonty.
Yeah, Western, it's just good to see them, I guess, piece together a fuller performance, where I think in the first month of the season, they were probably seen as a team that if they did get down by 30, they were one that could really dramatically fall away, but they showed a bit of spine and were able to stand up, which was really pleasing for the coaching staff.
And then on the Sunday, Northern dismantled Bendigo 18-13, 121 to 8-10-58. Not one of Bendigo's best performances. Obviously, Harley Reid was back into that one. He kicked 4 goals in that. But Parker Heatley played on him and actually kept him, quieter than he probably could have been. He probably could have kicked a couple more, Harley, but kept him a lot quieter than the impact he had in the end. So, Northern got up in that one, a big win for them. And then on the Sunday, the closest game of the round was Tassie defeating Geelong 11-13, 79 to 11-7, 73. It's probably what I think we sort of predicted this to be close. But two teams very similar. Colby McKercher back in that midfield, kicked 2-5, so it could have been even more effective given he kicked a bit straighter, but yeah, impressive from him. So that's the week of boys, and I'm going to quickly run through the ladder. And it's the first, we sort of looked at it before and we're a bit surprised with the teams that do sit higher up the ladder. But Tassie sit first on 28 points, Calder and Northern second and third, Sandringham in fourth, all on 24 points. So the boys works where there's a top three that goes straight through to the second week and the rest play wild card. So your top three are Tassie, Calder, Northern, Geelong and Dandenong and GWV on 20 points, Western, Eastern on 16, Bendigo, Gippsland on 12, and then the bottom two, Murray and Oakley. So it's unusual to see Oakley sitting at the bottom. We know they've got a lot of talent, but they do suffer a lot from the school system. So you never know what you'll get with Oakley, and I guess later in the season, you wouldn't want to face them in a wild card given that they are that low. It's a bit surprising. But that's for the boys. Move to the girls. On the Saturday, Eastern beat the Calder Cannons 7-12, 54 to 4-6-30. Eastern it was really the wind was a big one in this one. Eastern got out to a really strong lead. But Calder looks fantastic in that second and fourth quarter. I think that they are competitive. They're sort of a team you shouldn't take lightly. Depth was obviously a big factor in this one. We know how deep Eastern run, and the quality was there and really got them over the line in the end. But Calder did look like they were mounting a comeback, and it did feel like the momentum was all on their side. But ultimately, Eastern a bit too strong in that one. Gippsland, they lost to Sandringham 5-2-32 to 7-4-46. It was a good win for Sandringham. I think it was one of their best wins of the season in terms of just maintaining confidence on the field even when things weren't going against them. In a big last quarter, it was pretty much mirrored the boys' game in the end, actually. Yeah. Both of them. Gippsland were up for most of it. And, yeah, both Sandy teams had a really big last quarter. So that makes this week's game against Sandy and Calder a massive game for reasons we'll talk about later. Western Jets finally got their first win of the season, 9-15-69. They defeated the Murray Bushrangers 2-6-18. Both teams went in without a win. So finally Western get a win, and we can hope for the league's sake Murray do get a win before the season's end. The Stingrays comfortably beat the Rebels 9-3-57 to 1-3-9. Probably a result we expected in the end in terms of depth and quality. On the Sunday, Oakley 15-16-106 defeated Bendigo 5-2-32. We have a big performance from that game I'm going to touch on later, which was, I think, record-breaking as far as we're concerned.
Yep.
So, yeah, a massive performance to talk about in that game. And then the final game of the round, Geelong beat the Tassie Devils 12-10, 82 to 6-2-38. Geelong were really on top all day. Tassie were competitive, but it was the Geelong just moved the ball a bit better in transition, and that got them over the line in the end. So, girls ladder. In the Metro Conference, Oakley on 28 points in first, Eastern on 24 in second, Northern on 20 in third, and Calder in fourth with 16 points. Fifth is Sandringham with 12 points. So this is why this week's game with Sandy and Calder is so big. If Sandy were to win, they would move into fourth position, which is a final spot. But Sandy do have a harder run home than Calder, so it will be very interesting to see how that pans out. And then the country conference, the top three is pretty much set. Geelong in first, Dandenong and Tassie on 20 points. But then the fourth spot really is battled out between Rebels, Gippsland and Bendigo, who all sit on 8 points. So that will be interesting to see who gets that last spot. So that wraps up the reviews. We'll start with our top 10. Solely top 10s this week. That's what we've got left. We're going to go player for player, but like we said pre-recording, if one of us has, two players from the same club, we'll say both of them at the same time. I will start. We'll start with our girls in our top 10. Grace Baloney from the Eastern Rangers. I thought she played a magnificent game. She's a bottom major. A lot of the bottom majors for Eastern actually played really well in this game, I thought. Alicia Pisano was, prominent as usual, 2 goals. But Baloney, she's just taken really good contested mark inside 50, but I thought her delivery as well inside 50 was strong when she moved up forward into the ground. 2 goals on the day that were really good goals, actually. Just a nice roving technique when the ball dropped and snapped a nice goal. And then Yeah, she was just prominent with ball in hand, was using it really nicely, but it was her kicking that stood out. I thought that every kick she had was effective, and that was really important to why Easton was stronger on the day. I thought 19 disposals and 4 marks. So, yeah, she was the first one in my top 10.
And the first one in my top 10, Nathan, is, Emily Gladman. I'll go for the star performance of the weekend. 9 goals, 3 for Oakley, breaking the girls' record in the Talent League. So if you think about 9 goals, 3, they're 20-minute flat quarters. So it's some performance. She also got 18 disposals and 5 inside 50s. Emma McDonald was rested for the game against Bendigo, so she sort of assumed that role. She's a really good mark. She can take contested marks. She can take marks on the lead. So that's sort of her go-to. She plays, like all the girls really do, plays locally as a midfielder, but then, has really come in and played that half forward, that inside 50 role really well. She's adapted to it and looks really natural there. She's a powerful athlete, and it's obviously a breakout performance, but she has been going along nicely, I guess, in the shadow of Emma McDonald. At the start of the season, she sets up a couple of goals every week, and she generally does hit the scoreboard, or at least generate scoring opportunities for both herself and her teammates. So to see her get rewarded on the scoreboard is, an excellent reward for effort.
Well, that's mental. What 80 divided by 9? She's nearly kicking a goal every 8 minutes. So that's
every 8 flat minutes as well. So you think that's probably about 5.5. Yeah,
that's incredible. So a big game from Emily there.
Yep.
I'll knock off 2 Calder girls now. The first one is an 07 born. Now, we don't usually talk about players this young just because they're not going to get drafted soon. But this was a player that I was blown away with what I saw. First glimpses, I don't want to go too early, but I'm pretty confident she'll turn into quite the player. Her name was Jade McClay. Big for her size, really dominant. 1 goal, 12 touches, 3 tackles, 3 inside 50s, 3 rebound 50s. Probably the biggest kick I've seen in the Talent League ever. Now, it wasn't an accurate kick, I must say. There's obviously a lot of polish that needs to go into her game, but heaps of time. But it was outstanding what I saw. Her speed and power out of the stoppage was just insane. She'd just get out of it. She'd get the ball. She's going through 2 players. She's kicking it inside 50. Had a really good rundown tackle in the last quarter and kicked the goal, set shot. Her kicking is really the one thing that if it can be polished quite a lot, she will be an outstanding player, because that is probably the only thing that lets her down in terms of it's a massive long kick, but it doesn't usually hit a target. So she's just one I think definitely needs to be watched out for in the next couple of years. And then Sarah Grunden, one we've talked about a couple of times, 2 goals, 17 disposals, 4 tackles, 5 inside 50s. I thought she was really impressive and played sort of a similar game to what Grace Bologna did at Easton, like very similar on either end of the ground. Just really good kicking inside 50. A really nice set shot technique. Her, that was something that stood out as well. The ball just sailed through really nicely. Good run and speed to kick one from 30 metres out as well. So 2 really nice goals, and then presented really well up the ground and helped with the transition. That was probably where Calder struggled at times, but she was very calm with ball in hand and did deliver some nice balls inside 50. So, she was pretty impressive for Calder on the day as well.
Yeah, going back to Jade McClay, it'll be an enticing prospect watching the Cannons in a couple of years, having her and Chloe Baker-West run around as top ages. And, if what you're saying about her does come true and she is able to polish her kick, you could have 2 first-round prospects running around for the Cannons, which would be exciting for them. And I know they're pretty bullish on their bottom ages as well. So even next year, it'll be interesting to watch them. But moving on to my next player, the Sandringham Gippsland game. The boys, Luke Lloyd kicked 4 straight and took 10 marks. So he makes the most of his opportunities, as he generally does in front of the big sticks. He's a very accurate set shot at goal, and his hands above his head are like Velcro. If he gets hands to it, he generally marks it. They've got a couple of those, Sandy. They've also got Miles Enders, who's playing private school footy, so we haven't seen, and he's been a little bit injured. But Luke Lloyd kicked 19 in a school match for who's he played for? De La Salle. So they're pretty impressive numbers. He played a little bit last year as a bottom major. He's actually averaging 8.5 marks per week, which is the highest in the Talent League. So, and a lot of those would be contested marks or one-on-one wins. So he's not just getting cheap; he's sort of chipping around half back. So yeah, he's certainly one to watch out for that's generating a little bit of interest. I guess it's just a matter of giving himself that body of work for longer and, showing that he can get up the ground. He's 193 centimetres, so he's probably going to be hit up forward, not a stay-at-home key target. And, yeah, if he can build that consistency into his game and get a few more tricks beyond just what he does above his head, he'll be a serious player because that is a huge strength, what he's able to do when he gets his hands up high.
Yeah, for sure. And even when he came into Sandy last year as bottom major, he was impressive in his first couple games. So we know the potential he has. Hopefully he can continue that. I'll continue the trend with another Sandy player from the Gippsland Sandy girls game, Emily Goff. 21 touches, 1 goal, 3 tackles, 4 inside 50s and 4 rebound 50s. She's used to playing on the wing. In this one, she played in as a half back, played her role really well and was setting up really well behind the ball and just holding their shape really well. Good in the aerial contests. She moved into the midfield in the last 2 minutes just to sort of solidify the game for the Dragons, and she ended up kicking that 1 goal. So she was one that was really impressive. And hopefully she could move into the Metro side as soon as possible. She's been playing some good football, so we'll see how she goes in the next couple of weeks.
And then a Gippsland player that I'll touch on from a boys' perspective, and worth noting that there were a few Gippsland Vic Country representatives who played well, which we'll talk about in a second. We're deliberately avoiding the Metro Vic Country and allies, and we'll have a separate conversation about them. But Xavier Lindsay's not in that squad, and he played as an inside midfielder for the first time. It wasn't an absolutely outstanding game, but thought I'd include him. 16 touches and 7 pressure acts, so he showed glimpses of what he's able to do, and there is an eye that they want to play him as a midfielder next year. He is putting on size. He was obviously really lightly framed last year as a double bottom major when he played his first game out on a wing and half back, and that's sort of the position he's had since then. But he's shown that there is a little bit of upside and a little bit to work with. A lot to learn still, but he's obviously a prospect that he's probably going to be Gippsland's best next year. And yeah, I would argue that he's certainly around the conversation to make Vic Country. Probably does make Vic Country next year. So yeah, you want to see what he's able to do on the ball. You want your best players around it. So certainly he's one to watch for Gippsland. And we've spoken about him quite a bit, but it is good to see him adding another string to his bow and developing that at training and able to put it into a game.
Yep, definitely. I'll go with I'll continue the girls trend. I'll go with Chantel Mason, my final girl on this list. 6 goals, even though I thought she only kicked 4 and checked the stat sheet and she'd kick 6. 18 touches, 3 tackles, 2 inside 50s. She now leads the Talent League in goals kicked. Yep. That was originally Pisano. She's on 22 and Mason is on 24. It's ridiculous if you look at her stat sheet now. It's like 4, 7, 4, 6, 6 like goals scored. It's ridiculous. She's just ultra impressive to watch, and she wasn't even into it until really the second quarter. Like her first quarter was pretty quiet, and then the second quarter she was really impactful. Just a really nice kicking ability. Kicked every type of goal imaginable. Set shots.
As she always does. Yep.
Yeah, like, set shots, nice snaps on the run. Like, she does it all. And really good contested marking as well. She took a really good grab, sort of 2-on-1 in the goal square. So she's becoming a very complete player to watch. And it was, when the ball's going inside 50, she's a dangerous, dangerous threat. So she's the final girl that gets into my top 10.
Growing into a real handful for opposition players inside 50. It sounds like Claire Marnie from the GWV Rebels doesn't win a hell of a lot of the footy and is one who is a bottom major, but she's one who they'll be watching next year, and she'll probably be around that Vic Country squad again. She played in the trial match at Avalon Airport Oval a couple of weeks ago down back, and that's predominantly where she has been exposed, and it's what she does overhead, which is really impressive. She's able to crash packs and take marks, or at least bring the ball to ground. So yeah, she reads the ball really well in flight. I guess for her, it's just a matter of finding a little bit more of the footy and adding a little bit more polish when she does get it, because she's generally getting around that sort of 8 to 12 touches per game, which doesn't necessarily do justice to how much impact she is having, because when she is around it, she's always a threat, just because everyone knows how dangerous she can be as that sort of player that can crash packs, and she can also play forward. So that ability to read the ball in the air holds her in really good stead, and expect to see her do that a little bit, whether that's later on this year for the Rebels or perhaps next year.
Definitely. I'll move to another Rebel. I'll go to my first boy in my top 10, Ollie Hannaford. 15 touches, 4 tackles, 2 inside 50s and 2 rebound 50s. Really exciting, high-energy player. We've seen him a few times now, and he's a bottom major, so still a lot of development left with him, but he's shown great glimpses of what he can provide. He played in the back half in the first half, and then in the second half moved into the midfield, and then was a good catalyst to helping the Rebels get on top. And yeah, they dominated from that second half onwards. So really just a promising, exciting 06 prospect to watch out for, and he's been playing some good footy in 2023. So he's my first boy in my top 10.
We've heard a lot about Sammy Lawler as that bottom age prospect that everyone's talking about out of GWV, but certainly he's another one that's maybe flying under the radar a little bit. So good to give him some exposure. A couple of Western Jets that performed well against the Murray Bushrangers, Jack Kovacevic and Lockie MacArthur. So I'll start with Jack Kovacevic, 23 touches. He's averaging 19 touches this year, and I bring that up because he's got less than 17 touches only once. So what that indicates to me clearly straight away is he's very consistent every week. You know what you're going to get from him. It's not like he's got a 30 disposal game and that's inflated his average. It's, if he's averaging 19 touches and he's pretty much getting 19 touches every week. He wins the ball in and under, and he's able to win his own balls. So that's really impressive. Really clean below his knees as well. I guess the next step for him is fitness. Is he able to translate that into a higher level of footy, being, Vic Metro and that sort of thing? There is a little bit of polish that probably has to come before that sort of thing happens. Will he train on a VFL list? I guess we'll see later in the year. But he's certainly solid, and just as a really hard worker at this level, he's certainly one who has been important for the Western Jets in the midfield, and has probably shown it a little bit more in the last couple of weeks with Western having a couple of wins. So good to see him really building into the season. And then Lockie MacArthur played schoolboy for Peg, so we haven't seen him since the first month of the season. And he kicked 3 goals in his first match back at Talent League level, and he spent a little bit of time on Connor O'Sullivan as well. Connor O'Sullivan was sort of playing a little bit loose behind the ball, but he did take a couple of marks on Connor O'Sullivan, which were impressive, sort of overhead when Western were able to get some transition play. He made the most of his opportunities. We know he plays his best footy, Lockie MacArthur, as that sort of third man in. So he's not quite tall enough to be a key position player, but he has got a good athletic profile, and he was able to show that on the weekend. So hopefully come finals time or come the end of the season, we're able to see him piece it together, because I did see him do it in a practice match, and this is probably the first time he's actually done it in an official Talent League match. So I expect to see him do it a little bit more based on the talent that he does have.
Yeah, well, Western are building pretty nicely. They've, I think that they've won at least 3 of their last 4 or something like that. So they're tracking very nicely. I'll move to Tom Burke from the Geelong Falcons. It was a lot of the country boys that did play well, but Tom was one of the ones non-country players that played extremely well. But it's more his consistency in the last couple of weeks that has made him stand out. 1 goal, 12 touches, 3 inside 50s. He's playing that high half forward role that he's used to, but he's able to move into the midfield and make an impact. He resets quickly to get forward of the ball, which is just one of his main impacts on the game. When the ball does go inside 50, he's there when the ball drops. But he's getting on the score sheet. He's been really consistent and effective with ball in hand. So he's one that is promising to watch. And I don't think there's any reason why he wouldn't be in talks come the back end of the year. He's done nothing to suggest he's not capable of getting to the top level. So he's one that played really well for Geelong on the weekend.
Pat Hughes, I understand as well, won 21 touches and laid a few tackles.
Yeah, Pat Hughes was definitely one that played very well, especially for Paul Corrigan. Really good with the contested ball, and then really good on the outside as well. So he was one that performed pretty well.
Got a bit on the outside. That's good for him. Obviously, we know how good he is in and under. So, good to hear him doing that. I'll go now to Zoe Basenko from the Dandenong Stingrays, who had a big win, like you touched on earlier, over the Rebels. She had a breakout game, 4 goals, and she's really competitive, able to take a really good overhead mark. And, I think Coach Josh Moore is going to have a really fun time in the next year, being able to rotate her and Ali Simons between the ruck and full forward, because both of them are probably going to be in Vic country. Both of them, I guess, 2 of the prime candidates, speaking very early on, to get drafted as the best rucks in the crop, or certainly thereabouts. So, it's good to see her piece it together. We obviously saw her in the trial game, so she's already thought of very highly. and made the most of her opportunities when she did play forward. So 4 goals, really good overhead, and just looking for her to piece it together. But as a bottom major, showing a lot of glimpses.
Well, I'm just going to quickly check how many have you got left, just so I have 3 players to go. How many have you got?
As do
Okay,
I. Yeah.
good. We're 1-on-1 now. I'll go. Okay, Christian Ferranado from the Northern Knights. His first game back, in a while now, so he hasn't played for the Knights in a while. But a massive game coming back. 33 touches, 1 goal, 4 tackles, 4 inside 50s, and 1 rebound 50. His contested work was really outstanding. He's been working on more outside ball and getting that grunt into his game, which was evident on the weekend as well. But he just came back in flying form, and he's one player that definitely will be on a lot of people's radar come the end of the season, and will be good to watch him in a lot more football coming up. So he's my 3rd last player in this top 10.
Yeah, intriguing that he didn't quite make the Vic Metro trial games even. I thought he was probably good enough to at least make a trial game based on what I'd seen and heard in the first month of the season. Tamara Henry, I think it was a really good weekend for the Western Jets girls to showcase what they were able to do offensively. Obviously, the first win of the season, so they had a bit more of the play. But particularly for Tamara Henry, it was a breakout game for her. She had 25 touches playing as a high half forward, and the game was really open. So that allowed her to really get involved with her ball use and her polish on the outside, delivering it inside 50. And her tackle pressure was also really important. Like I say, a really open game. So for her to be able to shut down some opponents, not just tackle, but also to corral them and do some other little things, pressure acts, was important in ensuring the game was played almost wholly on Western's terms, particularly when you look at the scoreboard and from what I've heard in general play as well. So, good for her. And we know that she's in the Vic Metro squad. Hopefully she gets a game and is able to show what she's able to do when her team has a bit more of the running, because we know Western Jets have struggled at times this year, obviously playing a lot of Metro teams that have beaten them.
For sure. And then I've got 2 from Calder now, so I'll finish off my top 10.
Yep.
The first one I want to talk about is Jada Nguyen, bottom major, 1 goal, 12 disposals, 2 inside 50s. But I mean, the stats don't reflect how, I wouldn't say, it wasn't dominant, but like how effective he was at the very least. It was such an impressive game to watch. He's a very exciting player to watch, just really good speed and composure on the outside. He plays his football on the wing most of the time. Yeah. Terrific ball usage. Like, his composure with ball in hand, and he's a great runner, so he usually can get off his opponent anyway. But when he's under pressure, he uses it really well. He kicked a terrific goal from 55 meters out on the run. Was helped by the wind quite a lot, I must admit, but it was a terrific goal nonetheless with pressure behind him. And he put really good pressure on the ball handler when he didn't have the ball as well. I think he created at least 2 turnovers that I saw with my own eyes on that day. So he's just an extremely exciting prospect to watch. And then another one that we've talked about quite a few times now, Amin Name, 4 goals.
Yeah.
Well, the app says 3 goals, but I'm confident he kicked 4 goals. When I was messaging Jonty throughout the day, I kept saying when he kicked a goal, and I'm pretty sure it was 4. 14 touches, 4 tackles, 2 inside 50s. Really good burst speed through the contest to drive the ball inside 50. That was the start of his game that really impressed me. And then he just started presenting really well inside 50 and hit the scoreboard with, nearly every touch. It was a very, very big, impact per possession type of game for Amin. Kicked some really nice goals as well. They weren't simple goals by any means. They were pretty classy and crafty goals in the end. So he was one that I'd love to watch there. But a lot of great performances from Calder in the end. But that rounds out my top 10.
Yeah, good to see him convert his opportunities. I know there's been some times earlier in the year he's sort of kicked 2 goals, 5 or something, and you sort of think it was a bit of a what-if game. Yeah. So good to see him finish it off. And, also, I guess there was Jazz Soden. I think she needs to be touched on. I'll finish off with my 2. She's a hard runner on the wing. Sorry, not on the wing. She's a hard runner on the inside. She's a light body player, hungry sort of ball winner. And for her to be able to back it up now 2 weeks in a row, we saw her get 30 disposals last week, which was really impressive. And she's proved that wasn't a flash in the pan. Obviously also played in the Vic Country trial games. So, she applies tackle pressure and, does everything you would want. And then Sarah Pousty as well. As well as I know, Nathan, I know you've watched a lot of the Chargers, how classy she is, 22 touches and 4 tackles. So, another really big game from her. And that rounds out my top 10. Obviously, Sarah Powsty doing it, I guess, against a midfield that contained Bridie O'Rourke and, some high caliber prospects from Bendigo. They don't necessarily have the depth, but they do have the players at the top end. So yeah, it was a win for Oakley, and she would probably set up Emily Gladman a few times as well, from what I heard. So yeah, that were the standouts. And then now we'll move on to the next part of the conversation. We'll just review a few of the Vic Country and Vic Metro players, how they went on the weekend, some of the ones that went well. So I'll start off with a few from the Gippsland Power. Archer Reid found a lot of form. So 4 goals, 8 contested marks and 17 hitouts. So he's one who hasn't necessarily shown his potential for a full game for a little while, maybe since the first couple of weeks of the season. And this is certainly his best performance of the year. So launching at the ball, had a lot of confidence, and they rotated him into the ruck as well. So that's something that he can sort of add to his bow. We know how good he is leading up and how natural his forward craft is. So he played a really important role on the weekend for his team. And then Will Dawson played a different role. He played down back. We know he plays as a ruck, and he did that for Vic Country in the first game, but there is an eye that he might play as a key defender, perhaps. We know that they are a little bit short for height, so perhaps he plays down back on the weekend. And yeah, he did that last weekend for Gippsland and showed that he was okay. So yeah, showed that little bit of versatility. And Lockie Smith, who's also in the Vic Country squad, played ruck and went pretty well. From your perspective, Nathan, a couple of players that went well from Vic Country.
Yeah, well, Hamish Pearson was really impressive against the Tassie Devils. They're really good defensive work. Was just going at the ball really well. His intercept defending was really good as well. Took a few intercept marks and just really good drive off halfback. And then George Stevens is the other one that we haven't mentioned. 44 touches. Wow. A very impressive game from him. So hopefully he takes that form into Country's game on Friday against WA. So yeah, those were the Country players that definitely impressed. Moved to Metro. Yeah. At least, I mean, a couple for me. Jordan Croft kicked 3 goals. Similar type of game as he always is playing for Calder. A lot of good contested marks. It's his leading that stands out the most for me. I don't know if it is for you, but he makes really strong leads. He doesn't usually drop his marks when he makes such strong leads. And then Nate Caddy with 6 goals. 6 goals, 4. So very impressive. I guess we didn't mention Harley in the Big Country chat, but we mentioned before he kicked 4 goals as well. So a lot of big goal kickers in that Bendigo Northern game for you.
Yeah, and we know that we generally focus on the under-the-radar players, hence we haven't necessarily gone into as much depth when speaking about Stevens and Caddy and Harley Reid and these types of players, but certainly, yeah, very impressive performances, and they're showing why they are top 10 prospects, each one of them. I think Logan Morris is probably not being talked about enough. He plays forward every week for Western. You can just about put in the book that he's going to kick 3 or 4 goals at least. He plays for Vic Metro as a key defender because they don't have much height down there, and does that so well, takes that ability to read the ball, applies it for Vic Metro in a different position. So his strengths can carry across different positions on the field, goes back, plays for Western, kicks another 4 goals. Albeit was playing on an opponent that was probably used by Murray as an education piece, the player he was playing on, but still you've got to convert your opportunities. He did only take, I think, 4 marks, and he kicked 4 goals too. His goals weren't all coming from set shots, so he is able to do it on the ground. But yeah, I really enjoy watching Logan Morris. It was good to see him perform against Murray. And then you go to the Allies. A little bit of an uncharacteristic performance for Phoenix Gothard. Usually makes the most of his opportunities. Kicked 2 goals, 4. Should have probably been 4 goals, 2, 5 goals, 1. But that's okay. We know how much interest he is generating just as that small forward who's got a really elite step. He's really good overhead, and we've talked about him a lot on this podcast. So he's one who's probably flying a little bit under the radar with some other small forwards like your Nick Watsons and these types, Jack DeLeon, who are getting a lot of attraction, but he's one who clubs are certainly keeping a close eye on. James Leake kicked 3 really crucial third quarter goals for Tasmania, but plays his best footy down back. But to be able to go forward for 1 quarter and, basically did what Tassie needed him to do, kept the minute, and then ultimately they were able to get over the line, took 3 solid marks and converted each time from 45 metres out or so. Connor O'Sullivan, 23 disposals and 12 marks. We know how good he is. He's generated a lot of interest. Another one of those sort of top 10 players that we don't speak a lot about, but showed on the weekend that it was a really impressive performance from him, and he'll try to continue that momentum when he is playing for the Allies again against Vic Metro, and what will probably be the biggest test for him all year. And then Colby McKercher, 33 and 2 goals, 5, proving why, in my opinion, he's probably the best out-and-out midfielder in this year's draft crop. And then, moving on to some absences. I think you said Angus Hasty didn't play from a Falcons perspective, Nathan.
Yeah, no, he wasn't playing on Sunday, just a bit of a corky, but he'll be expected to be all good for the upcoming country game. So good news for him. Oscar Ryan, another one.
Yeah, Oscar Ryan, just nursing a little bit of a niggle as well, but he's available for selection if selected. And then Will Brown, obviously an ankle. We saw he didn't play the second half of the Vic Metro game a couple of weeks ago against SA. So still just putting him on cotton wool. He's another one of those top echelon midfielders in this draft. So no need to risk him. And Cooper Simpson with the repeat corky also didn't play. Whether he plays for Vic Country or not, he's probably the one where there is a little bit more of a question mark. But certainly the other three will be available for selection, we expect. Now we'll move on to the tips, Nathan.
Yeah, we will. We'll move to the round 12 tips. We'll start with the girls' competition. Well, actually, let me restart that. I had a good week in tipping. I came back. I don't know what I did in the end, but I'm back to 1 point behind you now. So it's now 81 to 80. That's my first week where I've done well. So I'm happy about that. But sorry, digress. The round 12 tips for the girls. We start with, on the Saturday, Western Jets and Oakley. Hard to look past Oakley in the form they're going in. They just keep winning and winning and winning, and I can't look past them, so I'll go with Oakley.
And they showed on the weekend that they've got depth with so many players missing against Bendigo, and they're still able to get it done easily. I'm going to go Oakley as well.
Sandringham and Calder, this is, like we said, this is the biggest game of the round in terms of what it means for both teams. If Sandy are to win, they will jump into fourth, which is a final spot. So it is massive either way. Obviously, there's still a lot of rounds to go, but in terms of just right now, big game. I'm like I said with Sandy, once they start winning, they're hard to stop. So I'm going to back Sandy, but I've loved what I've seen from Calder as well.
Yeah, so have I. I'll go Calder. I reckon they bat a little bit deeper with obviously the representative footy being played this weekend.
Murray and Bendigo. This was a 1 point game in the first round of the season. So these two teams should have a pretty close matchup. In terms of Murray being able to get their first win, we know Bendigo they've struggled to win as well. So this is going to be competitive like round one, I believe. I just have to stick with Bendigo, but I wouldn't be surprised if Murray can get over the line in this.
And I'm going to say the Pioneers as well.
Eastern and Geelong on the Sunday. This will be a really good matchup.
Yeah.
But more so, I would probably lean towards Geelong based off Metro playing this week. So I will say Geelong.
Yeah, no, it'll be a really good test. Even with Metro playing this week, we know Eastern have quite a bit of depth. So it'll be a really good test for the likes of Sarah Howley, Fontel Mason, who have got themselves into a bit of form. I reckon they're going to be able to carry it. And I'll say the Falcons as well.
And then the final game for the girls, Northern and Gippsland. This will be pretty competitive when you look at it. And again, it's hard to say when you've got Metro on what teams will be fielded. I think Gippsland will be a bit disappointed about their performance letting that game go. So I'll say they'll bounce back and I'll go with Gippsland.
Yeah, they have surrendered a couple of leads late. We know they've obviously got a young team, Gippsland. But I do want to back them as well. I'll say the Power.
And then we move to the round 12 tips for the boys. We start with Tasmania and Northern Knights, a very early game on Saturday morning in Tasmania. Both teams in pretty good form, and it's
the top of the table clash.
For the table clash, would you believe that? This will be fantastic to watch, but obviously Northern affected by Metro, so I will say Tasmania. Oh, actually, no, sorry, both are because of allies. So, I will still say Tasmania.
And I'll say Tassie as well. Yep.
Sandringham and Calder, another one where we're not really sure what we'll get based off Metro this week. Would probably lean towards Sandy in this one.
I think the only reason I say Sandy is that they'll get their private school players back, obviously school holidays, so that will give them a lot more depth, even with losing the amount of players they do to Metro. So, yeah, Calder obviously regained Hugo Garcia though, and I'm a massive fan of him. But yes, Sandy.
Western Jets and Oakley. This will be a tough one to pick from, actually. This will be a pretty competitive, close game. Just in Oakley's form at the moment, I'm not too confident on what they'll bring out, and I think they're going to struggle until they get their full team back. So I will back Western, but we know Oakley have a lot of potential though.
Would love to see, unless he plays for Vic Metro on the weekend, would love to see Luca Grego really tear a game apart. I know he's spoken about a lot and he's a bottom major. So, yeah, I'll say Western Jets with Luca Grego to have a best on ground performance.
Dandenong and Gippsland, this sort of local rivalry. This will be interesting to see how this one goes. This would be both foolish teams, I'm guessing, based off one's losing.
Well, country will lose.
Oh, they will lose because of Friday's game. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. You give your tip first for this one.
Yeah, I think Dandenong will lose a lot of players, so it makes it difficult. But I do still want to stick with the Rays. I'm interested to see how their midfield can operate without the stars in there. So yeah, I do still expect the Rays to win.
Well, I'll just go against, just for content wise. I'll say Gippy will win this one, and then 2 games on the Sunday: Eastern and Geelong. Eastern need to find some form again, and they've had a tough 2-week period, but they've got so much talent. So did Geelong. Tough one to pick from, but based off form, I'll go with Geelong.
And I'll have to agree with that. Yeah.
And then the final game, Murray and Bendigo. Both teams coming off pretty poor losses. Be interesting to see which team stands up with the loss of players from Vic Country and Allies. But I'll say Murray in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Pioneers. I'm just a little bit more sold on what they've shown so far.
Well, that wraps it up. A full podcast full of Talent League, which we hadn't had for a while. Next week will be predominantly talking about Allies, Metro, boys and girls, and then Western Australia, Vic Country boys. The Vic Country girls aren't in action until the end of July, so there's quite a lot of time before they'll be into it. So that will be the main base of our podcast next week, and we will touch on Talent League, but obviously we'll focus on the representative games. So look forward to that. Thank you all for joining. As usual, leave a comment below if you want to leave some feedback. And until then, we'll see you in the next episode.